I'm Joseph.
And I'm Nick.
This is Fish Jelly.
Yes,
How are you?
I'm good. I'm here. Okay. How are you?
Okay. I'm okay. I wanted to start off by talking about something that's bothering me.
Oh,
And I think I mentioned this before, but I should mention it again because it's still happening. On Instagram stories, do you notice that people post stories and then they write like they'll write like text on
yeah.
the story,
Mm-hmm.
but it's really small. And
Oh,
then they use that one style font that's almost translucent.
mm-hmm.
Why? What is
Well,
the point of that?
I guess some people like mysteries and puzzles and have time to further examine.
I don't know. Like, is it supposed to be like subliminal? Because I don't think whatever you're trying to say is worth that effort. But maybe they don't real. I'm old, but my vision's not that bad. Like I can see close up.
You're also not that old, but okay.
But you know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
my vision's not bad, and your vision's great. And you're saying you have a hard time reading some of the shit people write.
My vision's. I grew up blind. My vision's great because I got cut by a laser.
Well, I got my laser eye surgery 23 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
24 years ago. So that shit done worn off. So now I'm blind again, but I'm nearsighted. So I need glasses to drive or like see the TV. I can see the TV if we're on the couch, but if I'm sitting at the dining room table, I need glasses.
Mm-hmm.
But I can see my phone, although I am turning to that person who's like having to hold their phone kind of far away. It can't be too close to my face. But either way, I can see my phone.
That's good. Great.
And I don't understand the point of writing these long messages on top of some image of something on a story that no one can read.
Well, see, you know what the thing is? People want to communicate on a platform in a certain way that's not meant for that. And we haven't really developed any better way around that.
That's a good point. I think some people are using Instagram for like in ways that maybe they shouldn't, because I also know, and I've mentioned this before, but like the close friends post that, you know, are usually people's butts, but
Mhm.
also people post stuff on there that's like just everyday life. And then it makes me think, who are you trying to hide this from? Like,
well, I think it just all ends up being jumbled into one big pot.
so, you know, I don't want to go down that road. My main complaint is what is the point of taking time crafting a message that people can't read? To me, that seems like a waste of time and insanity, or like what kind of passive aggressive, or is this like your version of therapy to make posts like that? I don't know, but it bothers me.
Okay.
Moving on to something I did like, there is a YouTube channel or show called Reality with the King, and it's hosted by Carlos King.
Mm-hmm.
And Carlos King is a reality TV producer, and
he will remind you of that a lot.
Yeah, he will. And I've watched a lot of his stuff over the past year. You listen to
I've been in the car with him on, yeah.
Yesterday we listened to him interview Tawanda Braxton.
Mm-hmm.
That was a horrible interview. I couldn't even finish it.
Well, I find his style always a bit the same. Like it's always like he is enamored by the subject, and so his style is always the same in the few that I've listened to.
Well, he interviews people he knows. So that is why I like the interviews, because he has some of the inside scoop. So the person he's interviewing can't sort of give their like PR ready answer to things. And, you know, the reality is that he's interviewing reality TV stars. So they're already a little messy to begin with. But if you go to his channel and look up the people he's interviewing, if they resonate with you, which many of them do, then you're going to get a really good interview.
Mm-hmm.
Unless the interview is a little. I thought Tawanda was pretty.
I
mean, how old do you think she is? Like 50?
I would assume that.
And she's talking like a giddy schoolgirl about how excited she is to be engaged, and she says it 100 times.
But it's just like, you've already been in a relationship. You know the road that this goes down eventually, girl.
Well, then we were talking that it's kind of cringy to witness like whole ass adults, like people like 40 plus, be so giddy about a new relationship.
I don't care what age you are. Please don't ever type he. That for some reason that drives me insane. But what made me giggle listening to that interview was Tawano's complaining because she's asked about differences between how the Braxton family values were received when they started before social media was at its height as compared to now. And she's talking about, growing the show growing alongside its critics, i.e. bloggers, and how some of the bloggers have learned not to be negative. But she makes some comment about how some people, try to interpret their own facts about the show. And it's like, the show is not really factual. Like, facts are not something, truth
Yeah,
is
we
not
don't
something.
know your family. You're choosing to present something to the world, and then we're all like the audience is viewing this as like a TV show.
It's not.
It's like how you watch Family Matters or Desperate Housewives,
It's
or
not National Geographic. Okay.
no, like it. We're assuming that this narrative you're trying to present is what we're dealing with.
so
She
so there are no real facts. Okay.
anyway. I didn't. She's not the point I brought him up. She's a good example of like a person who seems kind of maybe they're playing in the wrong arena. I don't think she belongs on reality TV because she seems upset about it. But I did listen to, he interviewed Takara Jones, who was on season 1 of America's Next Top Model. She was the plus size model.
Oh yeah, I remember that name.
And
Okay.
and I rewatched no, what season, you know what? Now I need to look it up because I don't want to mess it up. Because I rewatched her season. Oh no, I was wrong. She's on the 3rd season
Okay.
of America's Next Top Model, which I rewatched I think 3 years ago. After all that hullabaloo on social media about how inappropriate the show was and how awful Tyra was to the models
And Janice.
and Janice and like all the things the girls had to do. But Takara was defending it. So the reason I brought her up is her interview is really good. She has such an amazing personality. I can see why she ended up becoming a personality. She's just a lot of fun to listen to. And clearly she and Carlos have like a friendship.
Mhm.
They say they've been friends for 20 years. So that episode is a really good example of like a fun interview where it seems like two people are just being authentic about, having an authentic conversation.
Mhm.
But she does talk about America's Next Top Model and how she doesn't think Tyra and the show deserves the backlash with this, modern lens, because all Tyra was doing was showing how it actually was in the modeling industry.
That's true.
Like,
Sure. to a
Takara was like,
degree.
because Takara was a working model for a period before she got on the show and then after. And she said that's how they would talk to you, treat you, tell you to make these changes to your body without any promise that you would get anywhere.
So we're attacking the mentors that are really toughening up the cattle for the abuses that they're about to experience.
And who are just a mirror of the industry.
Mhm.
It's like no one's attacking the industry. Like even by today's standards, you look at all these ads and it's like these are unrealistic standards of beauty.
Well, it's funny that we punish the wrong people,
Right.
and that's why things in many ways are still the same.
But I was trying to be positive, which is that if a person knows who Takara Jones is, I would recommend watching her interview with Carlos King on YouTube, because she is just a really fun person to listen to and look at.
Well, a subject we landed on talking about with Tawanda was he asks her about whether or not he thinks that the fact that her and her sisters as Black women receive kind of vastly different deals than the Kardashians.
It's so awkward to listen to people sometimes because they claim they understand the business and the industry they're in, but clearly you don't, and I'm talking about Tawanda, because she says that, yeah, they didn't receive fair treatment like the Kardashians, but it's also a business. There's also this idea of marketability. Like, certain people get big brand deals because they know the brand knows that this person will get their product in front of more eyes. Also, the Braxtons are like a generation or two older than the Kardashians.
Than some of the Kardashians.
And their reach is smaller. And the Kardashians sort of crafted their life for reality TV. Like they were doing all this in the name of.
That's true. I think there are some innate differences that that don't quite compare. But I think it is still a subject worth examining, and maybe is so kind of ingrained that it's hard to tease apart where that actually might have worked against the Braxtons based on them being Black women. But
They were also on a network that was not available on basic cable. The Kardashians were on basic cable, so many more people had access to the E network than have access to We TV.
that's true. But
So
I think if you back it up further, what kind of deals they get initially, also plants the seed for their later success, which they wouldn't have access to initially, right? Because they
well, but it's based on like it's just a business. I always say this because it's like things aren't fair when it's like if the market we're trying to appeal to is like women ages like 14 to 25, they're not checking for the Braxtons. Like
no, of course it is a business, but there are these doors slammed in faces, just like in Hollywood, where they're like black celebrities, black stars vehicles don't sell overseas, so we're automatically not even going to consider you, Denzel, for this action movie, right? Like I'm talking about those cliches and those attitudes and those stereotypes that stop it at the door and cause like a Braxton's to have to go to a smaller network initially, and so are therefore kind of thwarted from the start as compared to, say, the Kardashians, who right away get to bask in glory, right?
yeah, but the Kardashians, sure, I agree. I hear what you're saying, and it does make sense. I just think that like it's it seems a little naive, more than naive, for someone like Tawanda Braxton
Well,
to think that like
yeah,
her family's reality TV show is anywhere near at the level of Keeping Up with the Kardashians.
I think I think that's what's disappointing about like that soundbite from this kind of an interview is like I think there really is a point there that is valid, but the way that it's presented seems superficial and just like it's because we're black.
The
And it's
Kardashians were able to they were willing to do things like get married to people for
get
the sake of like uh
get get film
publicity.
getting film getting peed on.
And
Yeah.
right, and then the younger one started a makeup line. Like they're just more prime for the market that the network is going for and advertisers are going for. We TV, the commercials that play during We TV are not.
That's true, but yeah, I think that I see the Kardashians as being like bred for and streamlined for like a like they're the thoroughbred horse that we're going to dump all of the funding and attention into, and I think that is a worthier part of the conversation than the superficial bit that is presented kind of off the cuff.
Anyway,
Is all I mean.
moving on. I didn't know that. So Bill Condon filmed his version of Kiss of the Spider Woman. Did you know that?
The one with J-Lo?
With J-Lo. I
Yeah.
didn't know that.
Yeah, we talked about it. I brought
We
it up.
did?
Yeah, I brought it up in a project of interest however
Oh,
long ago. Yeah.
I was not aware of that. And the only reason I was made aware is because I was reading something about her and then it said, that filming had wrapped on this version.
Mm-hmm.
But then they referenced a 1998 interview she did with Vanity Fair,
Mm-hmm.
where she is just talking loose and crazy. And I wanted to read some of the things she said because
From the 98 interview.
from 1998,
Okay.
which of course, like she years later said that, she was so misquoted. It was all taken out of context.
Sure.
It's a sore subject for her.
Right.
It nearly ruined her career
Oh.
back then when she was still, not solidified. But I'm just going to read some of the things she said on why she was landing so many movie roles at the time. She said, because I'm the best. I feel I can do anything, any kind of role. I'm fearless. I work really hard. I'll just get better as I go along because I'm open to getting better.
Well, that's
Well, now that we can see into the future.
that is her work ethic, though. I mean,
But then she also says, I'm not the best actress that ever lived, but I know I'm pretty good.
okay.
And she also says, if somebody doesn't have the goods, they're insecure. I don't have that problem. And it's
Okay.
like, I think based on the fact that you are trying to maintain
I
the
think
same illusion for 30 years.
I think she'd already made the mistake of not having a prepared statement for something like that, and we see behind the curtain already, and she is faking it until she makes it. But nothing wrong with that. I mean, confidence is great. She is stunningly beautiful. Uh, Especially in retrospect, it seems like there were not improvements made in the right areas.
On Selma Hayek, she says, we're in two different realms. She's a sexy bombshell, and those are the kinds of roles she does. I do all kinds of different things. It makes me laugh when she says she got offered Selena, which was an outright lie. If that's what she does to get herself publicity, then that's her thing.
Oh, not like in-house squabbling with the other famous Latina. Okay.
And then on Cameron Diaz, she says, she's a lucky model who's been given a lot of opportunities I just wish she would have done more with. She's beautiful and has a great presence, though. And in my best friend's wedding, I thought, when directed, she can be good. Oof.
When directed, she can be good. Yes, Gloria Swanson.
I mean, J-Lo, when directed, I don't know that you have been good, but okay.
Speaking of which, I really want to rewatch The Cell, but not because of her performance.
I rewatched that, I think in 2018 in San Francisco, sitting in a hotel room. And I recall thinking it was interesting.
Speaking of, I'm assuming that the interview, the context of talking about these other two women is that we're honing in on the very few bits and pieces of Latino representation in Hollywood at the time. But they did often have to work against each other. But Cameron Diaz, getting the mask. I remember I've heard Salma Hayek talk about how she wasn't she was considered too dark for that. They wanted Hollywood really marketed Cameron Diaz to us in the 90s as somebody that this is Latino representation, and it's like, well, that's questionable how they did that.
On Gwyneth Paltrow, tell me what she's been in. I swear to God, I don't remember anything she was in. Some people get hot by association. I heard about her and Brad Pitt than I ever heard more about her work. Okay,
well, also she's a nepo baby, but
that's, I mean,
Dad,
your romantic life has been fodder for forever, and it seems like you capitalize on that, but okay. On Claire Danes.
Oh, not Claire Danes.
A good actress. Her emotional and inner life are available to her, which is a good start. But I feel like I see a lot of the same thing with every character she does. She's not that way in U-Turn, though.
Oh, because Oliver Stone directed J-Lo in U-Turn. I've never seen that. So that's why is that why she's being asked about such specific people? That's kind of.
Know. On Winona Ryder.
Oh, God.
I was never a big fan of hers. In Hollywood, she's revered. She gets nominated for Oscars, but I've never heard anyone in the public or among my friends say, oh, I love her. She's cute and talented, though. And I'd like her just for looking like my older sister, Leslie. Oh. Now I want to look up a picture of J-Lo's sister, Leslie.
Shade. My older sister, Leslie. Also, Winona... Okay, she's got 2 Oscar nominations for Age of Innocence and Little Women, I believe. Calm down, J-Lo. It's okay.
On Madonna, do I think she's a great performer? Yeah. Do I think she's a great actress? No. Acting is what I do. So I'm harder on people when they say, oh, I can do that. I can act. I'm like, hey, don't spit on my craft.
Don't spit on my craft. Okay. Where was this interview?
Vanity Fair.
Interesting. Okay.
1998. She goes on more about Wesley Snipes and some other things, but I just think, yeah.
Okay.
She talks about beating out Sandra Bullock in Out of Sight.
Oh, wow.
She talks about demanding $5 million for starring in Out of Sight before settling on $2 million.
Oh.
Because she really... I'll read this one. On her husband, her first husband at that time, and that was who she was married to at the time of the interview, Ohani Noah, who she divorced shortly after this interview. It's tough for me because the men I'm attracted to for some reason haven't gotten it together. Even my husband, I feel, has a lot of potential, but he's not at the point where, I mean, even though he has lots of contacts, even though he's doing his own thing, opening up a club and restaurant here, whatever business he gets in, he's not going to make as much money as me.
Oh,
That's something he has to deal with and to live with, which is tough for someone like him.
oh my! That reminds me of like Betty Davis saying, "There's not ever going to be a Mr. Betty Davis." Like,
I can see why he had a problem with her.
wasn't he the one that was on that "I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here" series?
No, I think that was Chris Robinson, the dancer.
Oh,
I mean, but I could
I
be
lose
wrong.
track.
You could
I
be
don't
right.
know.
But she's had so many lovers. I don't know.
Well, and you were just listening to this other podcast you discovered, and they were reviewing J-Lo's documentary about
This is me
this.
now, then, and again.
Yeah, and like all the hullabaloo about this greatest love of all, and then several months later she's getting divorced again. It's like, girl,
The podcast is called Movies We Missed.
Mm-hmm.
I should talk about this podcast because it's two people, two friends, a man and a woman.
Humans.
I don't want to presume their genders, but they have a fun podcast where each week one of them picks a movie, like it's not a secret though, because at the end of every episode, the one will ask the other, "Do you have a movie for me?"
Oh.
And then they'll say, "Yes, I want you to watch this."
Oh, that's cute.
But I discovered them because someone who listens to us said that they bumped into the man at a party, and that the only reason they knew them is because we talked about a movie that this person was in. So this is like a circuitous route, but we've talked about a short film called The Strange Thing About the Johnsons.
Yeah, early Ari Aster.
An early Ari Aster film. And it's about it's about incest,
Mm-hmm.
a father and son. Well, the son is played by Brandon Greenhouse.
Mm-hmm.
And so someone who listens to our podcast said that they watched that short because of us talking about it. And somehow they recognized Brandon Greenhouse at a party. But then they sent a picture to us saying like, "Hey, we met this guy." So then I looked him up, like, oh, I wonder if he's been in more movies, and then discovered he had a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
But the podcast is really cute. And then they quoted you.
They did.
Yeah, in their podcast for the Tyler Perry classic, Mea Culpa. They use your pull quote. So I would and I thought that was a fun episode. So I would recommend checking out Movies We Missed. Specifically, you can start with the episode of Mea Culpa.
Mm-hmm.
Moving on, Whoopi Goldberg announced that she started an all-women's sports TV network.
Oh.
It's called AWSN, and it's already live. They have a website. But yeah, the goal is to, like, if it's a sports network, like if there are women playing, they're showing it. So I thought that was kind of cool.
Mm-hmm. That's excellent.
Okay, moving on to the restaurant section.
Mm.
I want to start with, I got duped again. I follow several vegan Instagram pages because a lot of times the food looks really good. And I have zero intention of making any of it. But it's fun to look at food. And one of these ladies, I should never trust vegans, and I'm going to make a controversial statement. I'm not trusting vegans with dessert.
It's the dessert.
Dessert is never right. I don't want to eat your vegan cheesecake. I don't want your vegan carrot cake.
And I don't want to be lied to blatantly in my face about how good it is.
Oh my God. So then I saw some posts of this lady saying, I'm making the viral Erewhon. And we've talked about Erewhon, that overpriced grocery store in LA.
Mm-hmm.
The viral Erewhon raw cinnamon roll.
Mm.
And so this lady's like, I have this recipe. And when she made it, it did look good, even though, like, if you Google Erewhon raw cinnamon roll, the picture of it looks disgusting. It looks like someone took like Spam and rolled it into a cinnamon roll and filled it with doo-doo.
See, I think it looks like some kind of animal droppings in the forest that somebody
Well,
shaped like a
still doo-doo.
spiral cookie.
Still
Yeah.
doo-doo. It looks terrible. But I thought, well, this kind of sounds good, but I should have known because I didn't read the ingredients. This raw cinnamon roll from Erewhon, it's gluten-free and vegan.
Mm-hmm.
It's made out of oat flour and pecans, maple syrup and dates. Those are the 4 ingredients.
Dates.
And then with cinnamon, obviously. And then to kind of bind it all together, they use psyllium. So it's high fiber, low sugar.
Which, healthy.
But it tastes exactly the way you would think.
Dry.
But I bought that thing so excited.
Good thing I also got that coconut cake.
Their coconut cake's fine.
I like the frosting. Mm-hmm.
But that damn raw cinnamon roll, it was $9.50 for a tiny little slice. It was like the slice of like a piece of sushi.
You were so excited you didn't even bring up the price.
I know.
That's how excited this man was.
Because that's very rare that I don't question the price.
Because you've made me put things back for that are that size at that price.
But I did it.
Shame me.
Well, now that we're rich, I feel like,
okay.
I deserve for all the work I put in. For all the work I put in, I deserve little treats. But that shit was so disappointing, wasn't it?
I had one bite and I'm like, I don't need any more of that. Put it in the garbage.
I finished it. It's not gross. It's just not
necessary.
It's just not necessary.
Like a lot of vegan products that are trying to mimic the authentic thing that they cannot have. It's like, you just can't have that. You just can't have cheese. It's not the same. I don't need it. Like, I think if you're committing to that lifestyle and those choices, it's just like, I don't need that shit anymore. I'm
well,
I'm in a better place.
I do enjoy vegan food, and we do go to vegan restaurants, and and I go because I like what I ate, not because I'm forcing myself. But I do think that
there are some things that work. Correct.
Well, and it's just like, I don't know. I feel weird about like, don't call it cheese then. Call it cashew paste or something. You know what I mean? Like,
and don't make it a goddamn homonym. Chick-in. This is chick-in. Like, huh? What? Is it chicken or chicken? It's not chicken. It's not the bird. It's
but
not
I
poultry. Understand
having to name it something people can understand, but it's still, as I venture more into veganism, I'm still receiving these harsh wake-up calls that like, oh, this is not what I wanted.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Because they call it this, but it's not that.
But it's always good to try. It is.
Anyway, Erewhon's raw cinnamon roll is trash, and I want my $9.50 back. Anyway.
It made me just want those cinnamon rolls I made a couple weeks ago that were amazing with all of the sugar and dairy and everything. And terrible for you. Terrible.
We tried a new pizza place called Pizza Buono, which...
Oh, we tried 2 pizza places, but okay.
But it was very confusing because apparently they have 2 locations that are on the same street. And one is like, I guess, the original flagship.
Like Sunset and Alvarez.
And then one is the Alvarado. And then one and then one is the like satellite. So we parked... Because if you Google Pizza Buono Silver Lake, you get a picture of like this storefront on the corner of Sunset and Alvarado. But then the address takes you to the restaurant that's like a block down the street.
Mm-hmm.
And it has a parking lot. So it was very confusing. We went to the one that's in the picture first, and that service was terrible.
Well, because that's the one I always walk by during the day, and I'm like, is this ever open?
We walk in there, and there were like 6 like Postmates Uber Eats drivers just standing there waiting, and there was no one assisting them. And then this lady comes out like, well, we're working as fast as we can.
We had too many orders come in at once.
Like, okay, not my problem. Then we're standing there looking stupid, and we're not even acknowledged. And we stood there maybe like 5 minutes
longer.
And then of course I said, well, forget this. And then we walked around for a while and then decided to try the satellite location. Because we had walked by and it didn't look cute. Like, not the, it's like they have tables, but they don't want you sitting there necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess we're kind of desperate. Well, I felt bad too because you had the taste for pizza that night.
Well, because I'd watched Mystic Pizza and I wanted that.
Right. So we go, and the service there was It was a like a little old lady working whose English wasn't the
She was very
best.
nice though.
She was nice, but we stood there for a long
But
time.
again, though, there's all these drivers picking up food, and it's just like,
I just think a lot of these restaurants weren't equipped to deal with like this sort of rapid influx
well, the
of
new reality of
the new reality
yeah.
of people picking up like delivery drivers who don't work for you constantly in your restaurant trying to get stuff and being pushy and they don't want to wait. And so we ate there. We ordered a pastrami sandwich and a pizza. I like so they make all their bread fresh there. The bread was very fresh, very soft. I like pastrami. I like a lot of mustards. This one was a little different though, because was that provolone cheese?
Yeah, I usually use provolone when I make it at home. I like a smoked provolone, but
But
yeah,
this cheese was very flavorful.
yeah.
And I think this is the first time I've had a pastrami, like a hot pastrami sandwich where like the cheese was very present, like in the flavors.
Okay.
So I liked that.
And they had tomatoes.
There were tomatoes. And I think the combination of like the very good pastrami meat with the flavorful cheese and the very soft, fresh bread, I thought it was quite nice.
It was very good. The pizza was fine. You know what? I actually liked it more the day after. Our leftovers.
I enjoyed it both. Like, yeah. So the problem is it worth the trouble? Because it's not a nice place to sit. So then it's like, well, I wouldn't just drive there to go pick up the pizza. You know, it's a
Unless
little.
I'm already over there.
It's a little far for us to order it because then it's not going to be fresh when we get it.
No, but I like to sit in a coffee shop over there. So
yeah, but you're not going to take the pizza to the coffee shop
after I leave. I mean,
yeah, but then still, by the time you get home, it's going to be
okay.
I don't know. It's just it's unfortunate when I find food I like that isn't necessarily like sit down because I'm never going to get it to take out because it's too far from my house. Like I don't want 30-minute old. Anyway, another pizza restaurant we tried is Pizzeria Mazza, which I've driven by 100,000 times and I never think about because it's always packed.
Well, there's always a line, which
always a line, and it's on Melrose and Highland, and there actually is parking on Highland if you know where to park, but it's just a cluster of an intersection.
I think the line also, once you get inside, the line seems more daunting outside than what in reality is happening, I think.
Well, and you know, since we went for the first time, I realize now that the reason the line looks so crazy is because there's nowhere to stand inside. So everyone who's in, like, there's no sitting area to wait.
No.
So everyone who's outside is literally everyone who's waiting. Like there aren't like 5 people or 10 people inside also. So that's why it always looks like there are 5 or 10 people in line.
And we had reservations.
But you made reservations for 5, so then we got right in.
That's when they opened. So,
what did you think of your food?
I really liked my pizza. Slightly overpriced as I'm used to. I didn't like it as much as Pizzeria Say.
You ordered the Meat Lovers Pizza, which was $30, and it's like the how do you say
Napolitan?
That style, like brick
Neapolitan.
oven. But it was like a personal pizza.
Yeah,
so
it's too small for that price. But it was good. I really liked the sauce. I think and the crust, of course, was really
I liked
good.
the fennel pot because it had bacon, pepperoni, fennel sausage, some other meat I can't pronounce, I think. But I really liked the sausage.
Yeah, it was good.
And then we ordered their lasagna.
Yeah.
And I had never had lasagna served this way. It was served in a like metal like dish.
Its own little what do you call those things?
Like its own personal baking pan.
Yes.
So to get it out of there, you're just getting the presentation is terrible because we shared the lasagna and they give you a big spoon and then you were trying to serve me a portion, but there's no way to get it out that it doesn't look like mush on my plate. And, you know, that little dish was like $30.
Well, see, part of the reason that it's mush is their lasagna had a lot of meat, a lot of ground beef in it. And when you have more cheese, like a ricotta that's usually mixed with eggs, right? And mozzarella or whatever cheeses you're using, that firms it up so you can get a nice slice. And all the meat just oozes out. There's nothing binding. There's no binding agent.
I will say I really liked it. Like the flavor.
The
I
flavor was
kind of like
good.
that there wasn't a lot of cheese and pasta.
See, I wanted more cheese.
Yes, but I also like a more traditional lasagna was what I had in mind.
Mhm.
That being said, would I order that lasagna again? Sure.
It was also $30.
Yeah, I mean, for what I mean, it's expensive, and then the wine's expensive, so then we just end up buying a bottle because it's like,
Well, because if we the per glass, what they offered per glass was $25 per glass. So it's like, well, it's more effective to get a more what one of their cheaper bottles of wine.
and then you got a dessert. This it was basically like,
Ice cream pie.
they have this fancy name for it, like stracciatella gelato something,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it was basically like one of those Reese's ice cream cake pies with the Oreo crust.
Mhm.
And then they even say in the menu it has an Oreo crust, which I think sounds so cheap. Like, but anyway, it was
It
tasty.
was tasty. $19.
So would I go there again? I think this might be in the category of like when people want to take us to dinner.
Oh,
Because I mean, it's very close to our house, so it's easy to get there. My problem is for what we spent, I was sitting on like a $20 wooden chair at a two-top wooden table that looked like it belonged in any dirty pub. It just wasn't like
no, but the ambiance was nice and the service was good. And they do this thing in like, I'm using air quotes, nicer restaurants where like they have wait staff like hawks
well, it's more, I
pouring
mean, it
water. And
has
it's
a
like,
fine dining vibe where it's like
yes,
multiple people constantly catering to you, which is nice in the sense that we can get in and out quickly because
sure.
all your stuff comes and
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm still having a hard time with paying these kind of prices to just sit in like a hard chair at a rickety table that with no room, and then we're all squished in together. And yes, the food was good. I'm not a foodie as much as like an experience. Like I want to sit somewhere nice and comfortable, and
Hmm.
it's not too loud, and the lighting's favorable. Like I want to feel good while I'm at the restaurant.
Hmm.
Because because then it's like, well, there are other places I like that we could just go pick up the food and take it home. you know,
Right.
like I don't. So then it's like, would I ever order food from here to bring it home? No, because it's really expensive for what it is.
I agree. Yeah.
But clearly, the people who were eating there were kind of fancier. So, I mean, I guess it works for them. Let's take a break. Films released we didn't cover. The best Christmas pageant ever.
Um, so we saw a trailer for this and it looked miserable. That I don't want to see. I do love Judy Greer.
Oh yes, now I remember.
It's directed by Dallas Jenkins. It is a remake of a 1983 TV movie starring Loretta Swit. Remember Loretta Swit from MASH, I believe?
Ooh, I'd have to look that up.
And there's a young Fairuza Balk in that original. Or I'd be more curious to rewatch that other one. But I had no desire to try to see this new one, despite people involved that are near and dear to my heart. But that came out.
Huh. Okay. Weekend in Taipei.
George Huang directed this, who I believe did a film with Kevin Spacey in the 90s called Swimming with Sharks that I've never seen. But Luke Evans is headlining, and you just need to look at the poster art, I think, and you can realize what the flavor of this item is.
Well, I'm having technical difficulties, so Weekend in Taipei. Let me see if I can.
Well, you already passed on reviewing it because
Well, for some reason my keyboard's not working. I don't know what's happening. Yeah, I don't know what's going on, but I'll have to reference Weekend in Taipei at another time.
oh, okay.
Moving on, Bird.
God, I was disappointed in Bird. I saw it in Cannes, where it was in competition, directed by Andrea Arnold. Notably, the first film she's had play there that won nothing. But Franz Rogowski, who turned into a big bird, a la Black Swan-ish, and Barry Keoghan are in it, and it's centered on a young. She's not using this terminology. They're not using this terminology because I think they haven't discovered this about themselves or been allowed to yet. It's but a young non-binary child that is navigating kind of a very toxic environment between guardians and lots of abuse, and this derelict man she discovers, played by Rogowski, ends up being a savior type that is also a feathered avian creature. But I didn't love it. I don't know. I didn't.
It looked interesting until you said you didn't love it.
It has some interesting things, but I think it also is kind of predictable. Like I've seen so much stuff like this before, despite, the specificity of certain things. I don't. I was kind of surprised coming from Andrea Arnold, who, her 3 or 4 before this, there was always something quite exceptional about them. Even her Wuthering Heights updo from 2012, which I think a lot of people didn't love. I really liked that film. But anyway, what do I know?
Christmas Eve in Miller's Point.
I saw this at Cannes this year as well. It was in Director's Fortnight. I think one of the few American films in that sidebar. Tyler Taormina directed it, whose previous work I'm not familiar with. It kind of feels like the title just says. It's this kind of family gathering at Christmas, and I think it's the last time they're going to have access to this family estate. I don't remember the reason, and it's kind of just things like that going on around Christmas time, and has a nice cast. But I didn't find it very memorable, clearly, because I saw this in May and I don't remember much about it.
Lastly, Small Things Like These.
This film was also just okay, especially considering the subject matter, which is dealing with the traumatic, troubling history of the Magdalene laundries, and the abuse inflicted upon young women in them. But I think that this opened the Berlin Film Festival this year, 2024, starring Cillian Murphy. And I think that the festival, the programmers were going off the hype surrounding the Oscar attention, because Mr. Murphy, I can't remember if he'd won by the time the festival started. But anyway, they were planning, it was good timing, I think. And Emily Watson won a Best Supporting Actor award, which I thought was strange because she's only in 2 scenes. It's a decent film. It's based on, I wish I'd read the book, which I heard was very slight, which is written by the woman that also wrote The Quiet Girl, I believe, which was also adapted recently. I might have gotten some detail wrong somewhere here or there, but it's fine. It's worth seeing. If you like Murphy or Watson, by all means. But to me, there's a much better film from 20 odd years ago called The Magdalene Sisters that is much more heavy hitting to me on what these women experienced. But anyway.
Projects of Interest, Sacrifice.
So Ramon Gavras apparently has a new project he's announced that's going to star Anya Taylor-Joy. And, of course, his father was Costa Gavras, who, I don't know that he'll ever ascend to those heights. But he's an interesting filmmaker and has done some... I think visually speaking is where his power lies. I remember seeing his debut, Our Day Will Come, with Vincent Cassel, which I think maybe still might be his best. And he didn't do a film for 8 years until The World Is Yours, which notably had Isabella Gianni in it. And I remember not loving that. And then Athena, I saw at Venice 2 years ago now. Visually stunning. Like some of the action sequences, subject matter felt a little superficial and basic and very French contemporary issues going on there that don't differentiate it. If it wasn't for the exceptional visuals, I don't think you would differentiate this with any number of other recent French films trying to do the same thing, like Les Miserables by Laj Lee. Anyway, Athena, yeah. So he's got a new film starring Anya Taylor-Joy called Sacrifice. I don't actually, off the top of my head, I don't remember what the subject's supposed to be, but it's genre, and I find her interesting. So there you go.
The Dog Stars.
Ridley Scott. Did you know he's 87?
The man who did Gladiator 2?
Oh, yes.
I would believe it.
But I think that his rate of working makes me kind of downplay how old he actually is. But he still says he's got a few left in him. And he's, already is he done with the Bee Gees movie? Anyway, that his next
Oh, there's a Bee Gees movie?
he's making a movie about the Bee Gees, but he just also was hinting at another project he's lining up for right after that. It's going to be called The Dog Stars, and he's reuniting with Paul Mescal, who he just directed in Gladiator 2. And it's something about some kind of pandemic that's wiped people out, and Paul Mescal is this man on some Colorado base alone with his dog. So it sounds like coronavirus meets I Am Legend. But anyway, that's going to happen. I guess that's interesting.
Well, unfortunately, there are entries in the obituary section.
Mm-hmm.
Tony Todd died, y'all.
Oh, and that's also somebody that I guess 69, that's how old he was when he died, is not old, really.
No.
But for some reason, I didn't even, in my mind, he hadn't even gotten that old. I don't know.
Well, he worked a lot, which
He
I'm
did.
glad.
But in kind of the same way of like Danny Trejo, it was like, you are doing everything that you're getting offered, I think.
Well, but I hope that that's a good experience. Like, make his money. I'm sure all the projects he worked on, they were excited to have him. And I'm sure.
Well, of course, he elevates, he's notable enough that he's going to elevate all this stuff. But
Right. And, I'm assuming, these are easy projects for him to, come in, do what he needs to do and leave. And I hope he made his money. Of course, I think everyone should know him from Candyman.
well, and he's got a lot of voice work too, because he had that voice.
He had a great voice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, he died at 69. Well, it wasn't my choice for a secret movie, but I probably wouldn't have chosen Candyman anyway.
No.
And then I watched all those Victor Crowley movies. What are they called? Like Hatchet.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there was like a few years.
Yeah,
was it during the pandemic or?
I think it was during the pandemic. We ran through all 4 of them.
Yeah, and I know he's prominent in one for sure,
Mm-hmm.
Tony Todd. But yeah, and he, like I said, he works a lot, so he pops up in things where it's like, oh my gosh, that's him. And then we just reviewed Gladiator 2.
Mm-hmm.
And Paul Mescal's like right hand man for a period in the beginning, I thought was Tony Todd. And it never occurred to me to look up who that actor actually was. Did you know?
I forget his name, but he's a character actor in a bunch of stuff.
But yeah, I was bummed to see that he had passed, and I hope he seemed like a cool dude. So I hope he had a nice life.
He was in the original Crow. I mean, he wasn't. I think if we were going to do a secret film, it would probably be something from the 90s. But most of that stuff was, he's supporting character. The actor that I think you had mistaken him for was Peter Mensah.
Oh. And then Quincy Jones died. Quincy Jones is a prolific.
Well, that's a person that's legendary and iconic.
I mean, I don't know who could.
There's no one that's going to have a career like that again. But,
and I hate to say stuff like that, like no one will ever, but it's just hard it's hard to imagine that someone would ever have a career
and
like,
an influence,
in the modern era, like a Quincy Jones. I think, people my age were probably introduced to him working with Michael Jackson, but he composed film scores.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. To films we all know.
Mm-hmm.
In the Heat of the Night, The Italian Job, The Wiz, The Color Purple, Roots.
Somebody sent we have the Heat of the Night soundtrack on a record.
Yes, that's
that
right.
Sent us, but that is and you haven't seen that film, and that is an excellent film, I will say.
So he died at 91, and yeah, he did an interview a few years ago where he said a bunch of crazy shit, and then later had to like his people, and I think his daughter is Rashida Jones, who people might know from Parks and Rec
and lots of other stuff.
Yeah. But
Black AF.
Although
that's not at the height of Parks and Rec, but
no,
she works a lot.
But I think she had to issue an apology, or his people, just to say that because he said all kinds of crazy shit, like the Beatles weren't talented, and that he knew who killed JFK, and he said other shit, like he outed.
It's like Bill Cosby being rude to what's her name to her face, Wanda Sykes.
Oh God.
like man, just you need to shh.
Yeah, he was saying all kinds of stuff about like outing Marlon Brando having had sex with all these people, and
Well, everybody knew that
he
already.
he used to date Ivanka Trump, and like, yeah.
Mm.
But aside from that, his life's work is just. And there was a documentary I watched about him, and I don't recall what platform, but
Wasn't it Max?
just look it up. Well, here,
Oh.
I'll look it up. Quincy Jones.
Which I haven't watched, but
It's from 2018. Oh, it's on Netflix.
okay.
I would recommend it. It's just amazing
Mm-hmm.
what this man accomplished, how talented he was. But moving on to our secret film. Our secret film was your choice.
Yes,
and you chose the 1997 American neo-noir crime film LA Confidential.
Mm-hmm. Because it's Noir-vember.
That's what you told me.
God.
Why did you choose LA Confidential? Just because it's Noir November?
Well, no, you'd never seen it. I don't think it's a cornerstone of 90s cinema, but it's a major film, and I haven't seen it since 1997, since the year.
And when
came
your
out.
parents heard I had never seen it, they sent it to me.
Yeah, we've had it on Blu-ray sitting there for several months now, so I'm like, it's time.
It's been months?
Yes.
Oh, I thought it was years, but
no, it was this year. Mm-hmm. But I like
this nightmare of a life. Time just runs like who knows. But anyway,
calm down. I do really like Curtis Hanson. This is not my favorite Curtis Hanson film.
What is your favorite Curtis Hanson film?
The Hand That Rocks the Cradle.
Oh yeah, that is better.
But I also highly it's not good, but I highly recommend The Bedroom Window. It's one of the few American English language performances starring Isabelle Huppert opposite Steve Guttenberg and Elizabeth McGovern, but it's not a good film. And also Wonder Boys is pretty good. He did 8 Mile, In Her Shoes, The River Wild with Meryl Streep in an action-y kind of role. But he was an interesting director.
What is the premise of LA Confidential? As corruption grows in 1950s Los Angeles, 3 policemen, one straight-laced, one brutal, and one sleazy, investigate a series of murders with their own brand of justice. Main justice. So
this could have been called Three Kings. Yes, and I think that those 3 prominent strands, I think all of it gets kind of muddy with the storytelling, but I think that it's clear that it's a threesome.
Did I love this movie? No. Do I think it's good? Yeah. But there is so much going on. And to the point where I kind of lost focus of like, what are we doing now? Like, what's
yeah, which it's kind of customary for some noirs. Like there are points where I'm like, oh, it's almost like The Big Sleep, the original excellent Howard Hawks film, where it's like, I don't think anybody that's involved in that couldn't explain what was happening in the plot then.
I mean, it's to the point where I think the director knew, or the screenwriter, because at the end we get the main character Scooby-Dooing.
Yes, there is a Scooby-Doo moment.
Yeah, because it's just like, and I was paying attention.
You were.
And I was still kind of like, okay. It's not that it's hard to follow. It's just like there's so much going on. Let me try to tell the basic story. Mm-hmm. So it's about the LAPD in the 1950s and how they have a really bad image because like it seems like everyone knows that the LAPD is synonymous with corruption. Mm-hmm. And the way this movie plays out, that would be true. So I guess the main thing is there are these 3 detectives who are police officers who are trying to solve the Night Owl case.
Which is a bunch of people are gunned down at a late night cafe in LA, and one of the dead men is a cop.
And it says like the 3 are trying to investigate the murders, but like you said, it's kind of muddy because I feel like it's really only the straight-laced one, and then the brutal one kind of joins in, mm-hmm. and then the sleazy one is kind of in the periphery, like
yes,
like not really. I mean, the sleazy one doesn't join in until kind of the end, and when he starts sniffing around, that's when his ass gets killed. So I don't. It's definitely not like an equal pairing or trio. as far as the investigation goes. But the straight-laced one is Guy Pearce. The brutal one is Russell Crowe. And the sleazy one is
Kevin Spacey.
Good old Francis Underwood.
Great casting. Yep.
I really need to rewatch House of Cards. Every time I think of him, I think I need to rewatch House of Cards. Anyway, the Night Owl case, you already described it. So basically what we find out is that there is this like rich guy played by David Strathairn.
Pierce
Morehouse Patchett. And he is his kind of front for all his nefarious things that he like produces B movies, but really he runs drugs, he runs girls. He has this prostitution ring, and it's interesting because all these are like high class women who have all had cosmetic surgery to look like famous actresses. Most notably Kim Basinger as Lynn Bracken. She's styled after Veronica Lake. Yes. Although her character is really quick to tell us that all she had to do was dye her hair blonde.
Well, and do that and iron it the same way that Veronica Lake did. Yeah.
Well, it's like a roller set, like the waves, they set it. But anyway.
But I want to say I remember Veronica Lake actually ironed her hair.
Oh, probably. But the other women were told to actually get cosmetic surgery. So he does that, but the captain of the a captain of the LAPD, played by James Cromwell,
Dudley Do-Wrong.
Yes, Captain Dudley Do-Wrong. He's kind of, we don't learn until like the 2/3 point that he's kind of at the head of all this corruption, because he's in cahoots with David Strathairn running all this shit, which you always know, because
I mean, corruption trickles down.
Kind of like before the halfway point, we see that James Cromwell, he's like, oh, my family, they're at like the beach house in Santa Barbara. What kind of police officer can afford a beach house? Exactly. You know, so then that's always the clue in every movie when they drive a fancy car, fancy watches, they have more than one house. Like, but anyway, it is Guy Pearce who is really sniffing around trying to figure out what's going on. And we just find out that, it's James Cromwell's character is going around killing anyone who might spill the beans. And because he has a lot of power as a captain in the LAPD, he's able to cover up a lot of stuff. But everything culminates in this big showdown after James Cromwell has already killed Kevin Spacey for sniffing around at the last minute. He didn't care before, but now he looks into it. But Guy Pearce and Russell Crowe, who do not get along because they have very, very different MOs. Because Russell Crowe is like the quintessential, like, never cross the blue line.
Well, and he acts like a mad dog.
Yeah. Like, he's like going to protect fellow cops no matter what. He has to lie, kill, whatever.
Can't control anything about himself.
No, which is kind of annoying.
Yep.
And then Guy Pearce has a lot of integrity when it comes to his job.
He's self-righteous to a degree that is also extreme.
But none of these people are good people. They're all racist and terrible. But Guy Pearce is definitely like...
I think he's the closest that comes to a good person.
Correct.
Yeah.
And what fuels that is his father was a detective lieutenant in the LAPD.
Who was murdered mysteriously, and they never caught the killer.
But then we find out that it was probably James Cromwell. It was probably James Cromwell. Because his dad was doing the same shit Guy Pearce is doing, which is trying to like uncover corruption. So everything culminates in this final showdown where Russell Crowe and Guy Pearce end up at like a safe trap house or something. And James Cromwell shows up with his thugs to kill everyone who knows the truth. But ultimately James Cromwell and all his thugs get killed. And then the final scene is that Guy Pearce gets brought in by the police chief and the district attorney, and they all know that like there's something not right, but they're more concerned with the image, like the public's image of the LAPD. So they don't want to uncover all this corruption. So while they're trying to decide, like, what do we do with Guy Pearce, we had seen earlier in the film that Guy Pearce got a promotion because he
And a
was
medal.
and a medal because he was willing to rat out bad cops.
Mm-hmm.
And he basically said, like, you can bury this, but it's still going to come to a head because I'm going to tell.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can promote me as like the new face of the LAPD. Like, these are the kind of cops we want, even though internally everyone's going to hate me.
Mm-hmm.
So at the very end, when Guy Pearce, he spills all the beans in his Scooby-Doo moment where he literally has to explain the entire movie like I just did.
Mm-hmm.
Then everyone leaves the interrogation room and says, well, what are we going to do? But because Guy Pearce knows how to use the interrogation stuff, he's talking like with the speaker, and he says that, you know, you can either bury me, which is not going to work because all this is still going to come to the light, or you can double down on what I'm saying to show that, like, we are willing to do whatever it takes to clean up the LAPD. And that's what they do. They give him a second Medal of Honor.
But what's also notable is before this is the narrative. His character arc is that at the beginning, when James Cromwell tells him you don't have what it takes to be a detective because you can't do these three things, one of which is shoot somebody in the back so that you can win your case against somebody corrupt. And that is exactly what he does. He shoots James Cromwell in the back at the
Earlier
very
in
end.
the film, when James Cromwell's telling Guy Pearce, like you said, like, you're not going to be a good detective, he is outlining like all the corrupt things you have to do. It was kind of jaw-dropping.
Well, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I believe that back then they would be very open about it, but it's so crazy to hear someone say, like, are you willing to plant evidence?
Right.
Are you willing to lie for other cops who do bad things if you know that the ultimate outcome is like, we got the bad guy?
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, ultimately, James Cromwell's words bite him in the ass because he gets shot in the back.
Yeah. So I think that if there's supposed to be some kind of emotion, which I don't think is rightly constructed because I felt nothing, was that this kind of irony is what's present at the end.
Okay, so there are a couple of side characters, supporting characters that have a prominent place in the film. I don't know what value they but the first is Danny DeVito.
Well, he's a framing device. Yeah.
Danny DeVito plays this guy who has a magazine. I think it's called Hush Hush.
Hush Hush, yeah.
Which, of course, makes me think of Rush Rush, the Paul Abdul classic hit.
Oh, God, but, that voice. Like a chipmunk singing.
I do like that song. And the video it's shot in like Drag Race Season 1 filter.
Mm-hmm, yeah, I remember that video.
But it features Keanu Reeves.
Mm-hmm.
So for people who have never seen it, it's worth a watch just to see Keanu Reeves and Paul Abdul.
It also reminds me of that bad movie starring Goop and Jessica Lange. Hush.
But yeah, Danny DeVito plays this like gossip columnist type investigative reporter who is, like you said, sort of framing the narrative, dropping clues that honestly I found like his character really interesting. And I kind of wish that the movie just would have been like this sleazy gossip investigative reporter type guy uncovering the corruption in LAPD.
Well, because somebody like that, or that's why some of the best noirs, I think, have a private dick puzzling things together for themselves that we're working along with, rather than this dump at the end.
Because Danny DeVito's not really puzzling anything together. He's the device used to kind of connect the various characters.
Yes, and he is also working closely with Vincennes, the Kevin Spacey character, because Spacey's been relocated to Vice from Homicide, which is not good because Spacey's character is also moonlighting as a what do you call it?
He's like a consultant on a TV show.
Consultants on a TV show called Badge of Honor, starring a man played by Matt McCoy, who's in The Hand That Rocks the Cradle as this TV cop.
I thought the Kevin Spacey character just felt so extraneous. I don't even understand why we needed that character. For what? Like, what did it do for the story?
Well, he is. I think he's kind of supposed to be the nexus between the energies of Crow and Pierce, as this man that's filled with self-loathing, as he says he can't remember why he became a cop, and kind of has watered down the instincts that make the two other men on the extreme so much more corrosive.
then I think it needed. I just think that this movie feels like it is just they threw everything into this pot.
Mm-hmm.
There's just too much happening because it really doesn't feel. It does feel muddy that there are these three cops trying to figure out a murder because at the like hour and a half mark, because this movie is like 2 hours 15 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
at the hour and a half mark I had already forgotten like what we were all trying to figure out because we already realized that James Cromwell at that point is the bad guy and that he's responsible for the Night Owl killings. So then I'm just like, well, so what's the next 47 minutes about? Like what are it just and then that's when we kind of wrap up Kevin Spacey's character, which again I did not think we needed. And then the other main supporting character is, of course, Kim Basinger, who won an Academy Award for playing Lynn Bracken.
Can we talk about that for a second?
Yes.
Okay, so I haven't seen this since it came out. And 97 was a disappointing year for me, as usually it is with the Oscars, because Sigourney Weaver was once again overlooked for The Ice Storm, for some fantastic work in The Ice Storm. She won a BAFTA. I'm pointing right above my head because I have a framed picture of her winning that goddamn BAFTA, and she's standing with Kevin Spacey, who the Brits gave a BAFTA to for Best Supporting Actor in this film, in LA Confidential. Anyway, I don't understand why Kim Basinger, again, I love Kim Basinger on screen. She is gorgeous. She's stunning. She's captivating. I don't think there's anything to this character though. And in fact, like, I think that if this had been made in the 50s, this character would have been made fun of because if this had been made at the height of noir before it was called that in the 50s, this character would have been a femme fatale with her own directives, her own moral compass or immoral compass. And I don't, she's just an object here.
Yeah, I agree. As in this movie, Kim Basinger's character is just being used by everyone. She seems to have no agenda. And I agree. If this were made back in the time it is set, I think that she would have been more active in like achieving her own goal, like whatever that was, like trying to get out of the Hohen game or trying to make enough money to move back to Cincinnati or whatever,
Arizona.
or
But
you know what I mean. But like in this one, is she serves she serves a purpose, which is to be used literally for sex.
well, she's a cliche. She is like the gold standard for hooker with a heart of gold. So the scene that really drives me crazy is when the sex scene with Guy Pearce, who is acting like an uncontrollable animal, and Danny DeVito is filming from outside because he's been tipped off by David Strathairn that he's going to be there, and we know that she's having sex with Russell Crowe, who's a piece of dynamite that can explode at any minute. So the manipulative setup is all there, but she just sits there and she lets it happen. And later when she's confronted, teary-eyed, she said, "I thought I was helping you, but you didn't do anything. You just stood there." And then the way that I think it's so strange that, well, not strange. I think there are interesting elements that aren't used as well as they could have been, because she has a trick over, and she's got This Gun for Hire playing on the wall on a projector, starring Veronica Lake and Alan Ladd Jr. And but she is adamant that she doesn't like she's kind of tired of being called Veronica Lake. And what she likes about Russell Crowe is saying, like, you're better looking than Veronica Lake. And Russell Crowe takes her to a movie, and that's the only time we see her hair like this. And they're watching Audrey Hepburn in 1953's Roman Holiday. She wants to be Audrey Hepburn. She wants to be that girl. And I feel like and I don't know if it was extraneous or cut from the script, or maybe it's more apparent in the novel by James Ellroy that I haven't read, but her character, I think, gets thrown into the wind.
Yeah.
But the setup is there for all of these hints and things at more to say about her, but it never says them.
Yeah, because like she immediately likes Russell Crowe because he doesn't immediately say you look like Veronica Lake. And then we see her with her hair up and there's no mention of like, I mean, there's just nothing to her character. I'm so shocked that this role won an Academy Award. Also, there's no, I mean, it's very even when Russell Crowe whoops Kim Basinger's ass, there's no change in her performance. She just is like, because he knocks her up against the wall, and she's like laying there looking at him like,
She's a martyr.
yeah. I mean, it's very interesting.
Well, and you have to remember that I think this was an award for how Kim Basinger had been treated by the industry, which is really shitty in the early '90s, if you recall, and because she had a 3-year break. I think in '94 she did a remake of The Getaway with Alec Baldwin, who she was married to at the time, and she was in Robert Altman's Pret-a-Porter, I believe, which I'd need to rewatch. But she hadn't been in anything in 3 years, so I think this was seen as like a comeback to like let's invite her back into the fold. Is how that is the gesture this felt like.
Okay, I want to quickly get through my few notes. It's fun to watch films shot in LA because I recognize so many locations, like them shooting in Echo Park and
Formosa Cafe.
There's a funny scene where Guy and I believe Russell Crowe go into the Formosa Cafe and confront a guy who they think is with a Lana Turner impersonator prostitute,
Johnny Stompanato, who
but Russell Crowe ends up insulting
the real Lana Turner.
Because he thinks she's just a prostitute made up to look like her.
And I brought up, you didn't remember it, but you've seen 2 films that deal with the aftermath of Lana Turner's daughter who stabbed Johnny Stompanato after he was beating her one night, which was a scandal that would define her. One of them was, I think it's called Where Love Has Gone with Bette Davis and Susan Hayward. And I think Woody Allen's September with Elaine Stritch and Mia Farrow is also very loosely informed by the Turner Stompanato situation.
Danny DeVito's character, we hear him, he seems, and maybe because it's the 1950s, it seems like everything he writes about is about people being gay. Because we hear about an article he wrote called Ingenue Dykes in Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's talking about some other person who's gay. And then there's even a moment where Simon Baker, the mentalist, is in this movie, looking very fresh
for him.
And he is like, I don't know if his character is supposed to be gay, but he's at least gay for pay because he's
definitely gay for pay. Yeah,
because he's about to frame like the district attorney,
played by Ron Rifkin.
Well, he doesn't know what he's doing. He just knows he's being paid $100 to have sex with that man, and then Danny DeVito's going to take pictures of it.
And they know exactly what hotel room Ron Rifkin, the DA, brings his trade to.
It's very odd. Like it just feels like there were all these ideas, and they just threw them all in here without really. Because I feel like that in itself could be a movie. Again, like the Danny DeVito character sort of setting people up. And then maybe he gets caught up in a murder and then people try and... You know what would be a good movie? The first act is this Danny DeVito character setting up all these people to get this kind of, like photographs and proof that can be used to blackmail them or sell magazines. And then Danny DeVito ends up getting killed. And during the investigation of his murder, the detective finds all this incriminating stuff. And so now he's trying to figure out what to do with that. And maybe he's using it to blackmail other people on the force. And I just think that alone could have been a movie. But then because there's so much happening, it's like, oh.
Well, and had gays been allowed to be the center of, they still really aren't in studio films, then yeah, that maybe could have been what we run with. But that's not what we get.
There's a scene where we find out a couple of cops had been like assaulted, or they got into a physical altercation with a group of Mexicans, as they keep saying.
Yeah.
And then the way it's like the telephone game, because they're saying like, oh, did you hear about Hobbs and Shaw? Like those Mexicans nearly killed them. Oh, did you hear about Hobbs and Shaw? Those Mexicans, like one of them's in a coma. And then we find out that they are fine. One of them has a black eye. Like,
Guy Pearce, who's working the desk sergeant that night, is like, they're at home.
Yeah, they're fine. Y'all talking about they're like on life support, and they are at home, totally fine. But then there's a scene where some of the cops bring in the quote unquote Mexicans, and then all of these cops run down to like the holding cells to beat them up. That was an uncomfortable scene.
It was uncomfortable, but I believe that they probably in reality would have talked a lot worse than they do.
Oh yeah.
And but that is and it's on Christmas Eve, I believe, and there are some photographers because they were doing an op-ed piece or whatever on the police department, a fluff piece, and they're there to take pictures, and that's what also is a catalyst for what happens.
Yeah, because on the front page of the paper, there's a picture of the cops beating up the Mexicans, and then it says that they were like that the cops were in the wrong. So that's how Guy Pearce gets a leg up because he's willing to testify.
He gets a leg up. Kevin Spacey gets transferred and makes him hungry to get back to where he started from. And the character Dick Stensland, who is played by Graham Beckel, who is Russell Crowe's partner, is the one that's killed at the Night Owl and was also one of the henchmen in cahoots with in this whole operation.
Whenever Danny DeVito picks up his phone, he answers it hush hush off the record and on the QT. I think that's really cute.
It's cute, but that shit, if you were calling him a lot, that would get old.
I think the best scene of the film is, so there are these 3 black guys who are accused of being responsible for the Night Owl killings. And so they get brought into the police station and they need to be interrogated.
Mm-hmm.
And so Guy Pearce is going to do it because he keeps saying, I'm the one who took the call. I should be the lead. But of course, Dudley, James Cromwell, is like, well, I'll lead it. You can help me. Because of course
he's got shit to cover up.
He has shit to cover up. But I thought the best scene in the movie is Guy Pearce interrogating the 3 black guys because they're in different rooms and he's using like the intercom system to sort of like strategically allow one to hear what the other one is saying.
Yeah, also some gay shit going on in here.
And there's some gay stuff going. There's a lot of gay. I mean, this could be this would be a good. Well, I don't know how good it would be. I was going to say it'd be a good queer diaspora selection, but the problem is that the gay stuff is just like an aside to like,
that's where we've become accustomed to
like there's not a lot to like extrapolate from it except that it's like, oh, a way. I mean, literally I listen to all these interrogation videos on YouTube and I just listened to one where they used a similar device, like basically threatening to out someone if they don't tell the truth. But in like 2017,
I know.
But in 1954, yeah, like basically saying they're going to out someone as queer is enough for them to confess.
Well, it's not just being queer though; it's being what part of the queer equation, the sissy at the bottom.
But yeah, I thought that was a really good scene, and then it leads to them going into a house and like killing some other people, because we find out that the 3 black guys
they didn't do it, but
they were framed for the murder, but they were guilty for like holding some woman.
They're holding some white
sexually
girl,
assaulting her. So they're not good people. But
I think what I maybe appreciate about this is James Ellroy has written something, and Brian Helgeland. We should side note about him in a minute. Nobody is good. Like the waters are muddy. Like everybody, even it's like they bring these men in and they're like, they're not guilty of this, but they're doing something nasty. And
I mean, the only person who I think is like kind of innocent is Kim Basinger.
Yes, but
and maybe Simon Baker, because he didn't deserve to get his neck cut.
Well, of course not, and he did because he overheard shit.
Right.
But he's also an opportunist. You know,
it's comical the number of people who are killed in this movie. It just keeps happening, and it's like, I can't, like, what's happening?
Well, and you kind of wonder what happens to bodies, and then we do get a scene of rotting corpses because one of the sex workers that died the night of the Night Owl was Stensland's girlfriend, who was cut to look like Rita Hayworth, and her own mom can't identify her corpse because her face has been changed so much. It's by a birthmark on her upper thigh. But underneath Rita Hayworth's mom's house are all these corpses that are just rotting.
Oh my God, that's right. And then that poor dumb lady who I thought sounded so crazy. But
she kind of had a voice like Suzanne Shepherd.
She's like, oh yeah, sorry for the smell. I think a rat died behind the wall. It's like, bitch, a rat. It smells like.
She goes, don't go in there. It smells.
She has like towels under the door.
But,
come on.
And then Guy Pearce shows up and she's like, oh, Russell Crowe's under the house, but he just found rats.
Yeah. Okay.
Girl. But Brian Helgeland, who co-wrote this, he was fired from the production of Payback, starring Mel Gibson, which I know you've seen. Because my dad likes to say "haba haba haba," and which is based on a great Richard Stark, aka Brian Westlake. Anyway, I think he got fired from that, and then all of that was going down, and LA Confidential comes out and is like a huge hit, and I think he was able to wipe the egg off his face. But he's somebody that it's almost like most of the stuff, including Legend, which he wrote with Tom Hardy playing the Cray brothers, the criminal twins, one of whom is homosexual, is always just like not. It's like almost there. It almost gets there for me, but not quite.
Okay, I think the craziest part of the story is Russell Crowe goes to interview Kim Basinger and instantly falls in love.
Yeah.
And then she seems like she has strong feelings for him instantly. And then it seems like they're a couple because she even asked, like, do you want to see me like for a date or an appointment? And he's like, I don't know.
Never mind, I could have made a mistake.
But then knowing that she is a whole ass professional prostitute, when he finds out that Guy Pearce had sex with her, and he knows that because he sees pictures of it, because Danny DeVito had taken pictures, he like goes insane. First, he goes to her house. Russell Crowe goes to Kim Basinger's house, whoops her ass, then goes to find Guy Pearce. They get into a fight, and then they finally settle down and realize like there's something bigger happening than this.
I think the best scene between them is when they dangle Ron Rifkin over the edge of his office building.
Yeah. But I just don't understand. Like, I think the relationship between Russell Crowe and Kim Basinger is laughable. I think that the scene where Guy Pearce goes over to see Kim Basinger and then he just instantly has sex with her, that felt so crazy to me.
Well, in that Russell Crowe, when he sees the pictures, can't figure out like, hey, this was probably not her choice to do this because there are pictures. But
also, anyway, she does this for a living. Like, she not only has sex for money, but she also sets people up. Like,
well, right. And
she's used for that purpose.
She's used for specifically for this purpose. But again, that scene just rubs me the wrong way because Guy Pearce is so self-righteous. And he basically sees her as like, I'm impressed at what I see, and jumps right down her throat. And I feel like someone like him, I believe he would have been turned on by her, sure, but he needs that extra push. He needs that slow hand of hers to guide him into her recesses, and she doesn't. She's just.
One thing I did think was cool is Guy Pearce mentions the name Rollo Tomasi, and it's because he and Kevin Spacey are talking about why they wanted to become cops. And Guy Pearce says, well, you know, my dad was this, and then he was killed by this bad guy, and we never found out who did it. So in my mind, I named this man Rollo Tomasi. And so that's why I wanted to be a detective, because of Rollo Tomasi. So when James Cromwell kills Kevin Spacey, when he realizes that Kevin Spacey knows that he's going to find out the truth, James Cromwell kills Kevin Spacey, and then he asks him if he has like a final, what's that term for like your final words?
Yeah.
Whatever he says, like do you have anything you want to say before all the life leaves your body? And Kevin Spacey goes, Rollo Tomasi. Like, oh, he realizes that James Cromwell is like the mastermind of all this shit. I thought that was clever. I did really like that.
Yeah, there are elements that I do really like. There's also a British band named Rollo Tomasi after that from this film.
And then lastly, at the end, after all said and done, and Guy Pearce got his second Medal of Honor, they're all leaving, whatever. And we see that Kim Basinger is outside with a new hairdo. She has like a bob now. And
she's no longer hooking.
And Russell Crowe's in like the back of a car because he was shot during the final showdown, but he didn't die. They were both shot, actually. But both meaning Guy Pearce and Russell Crowe. Anyway, Russell Crowe's in the back of this car, and then Kim Basinger pulls up, says bye. And now she and Russell Crowe are going to go be together in Arizona. That I thought was a horrible ending.
I don't think that she needed to show up to give Guy Pearce that closure. Like she had some kind of feelings.
She didn't. What does she owe him? They hooked up one time, and that's the only time they met, as far as I understood.
I think so.
So, and then why are you with Russell Crowe? He is a violent man. Like what?
Like this? Well, it basically is like a new pimp that's not really a pimp.
Because he doesn't compare you to
Veronica
Lake. Ugh. I hated that. Anyway,
again,
what would you give LA Confidential?
3.5. You know, you don't remember that the night of the Oscars. I remember watching it that year. Was between this and Titanic? Like that was the showdown of which of these two was going to win, and of course it didn't. But
I'm giving it 3 out of 5. I think it has a really cool cast.
we didn't even talk about the cinematography. Dante Spinati, who purposefully they tried to not make it look like a noir, like the with the lighting and everything.
But this story did not work for me. I felt kind of like dazed and confused, and like it wasn't gripping in the way that like I'm on the edge of my seat. Like for a crime thriller, it just
But people love this movie. People go on and on. But it's like, I think that if you pick some of those raggedy, rough around the edges, rough and tumble B noirs from the 50s, like the characters are much more vicious. I think their attitudes are more shocking. I think just all around, we weren't afraid to go into the dark depths of the corrupt human, the possibilities of the human soul. Like, I think back then we were more willing to do that than we were in this kind of retro nostalgia tinged bid to return to it in 1997.
well, there's LA Confidential. Next week, I don't know what's happening. It should be a light week for me though. I need a mental health break.
It's not, but
well, I don't know what I agreed to next week, but unless y'all want to have me pull a Britney Spears and end up in the hospital, I need to take it easy. But is there anything else you want to say?
To anybody out there having a hard time or a hard week, we exist and we persist, and stay focused and don't let others rob you of your good energy.
Oh, except for Joseph, he has to deal with it. Ta-ta.